for a sabbatical to be meaningful, I think it has to be a little bit uncomfortable. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Space for Life, Season 6. It's hard to believe that I've been podcasting now for 6 years, and this season I think is going to be an incredibly special, fun season with lots of new things that I'm going to bring to the table that came out of the summer that I took off, summer of sabbatical. And we're going to talk a lot about that a lot more in this particular episode. But we have so much in store for this season of Space for Life. So the first big announcement in terms of Space for Life is that I've brought on board for Space for Life a creative producer, good friend of mine, going all the way back to the beginning of my podcasting days. He helped me, Joe Wise, to help kind of up the level of everything that we're doing Space for Life, both the visuals, the audio, the YouTube channel, all sorts of things. So I'm so excited that Joe is going to be part of Space for Life this year. And he's even going to help me in this particular episode talking about this summer sabbatical. So Joe, welcome. You've been such a huge help. This podcast would have never existed without you in the beginning and help throughout all of the stages. But this year we're going to do a lot more together.
It is really fun thinking back to those early days. Well, even before the start of Renovations, I was trying to remember what the name was at first.
Even before that, it was with Steve
That's
Perkins.
right, yeah.
It was the greenhouse effect.
And that was actually my start in podcast. I don't know if you knew this, but that was because it was when I was at Hope. And so got roped into that project somehow and shaped my career. So it was the start of your podcasting journey and mine, which is fun.
That was wild. You know, those beginning days is kind of crazy to think about in the Hope Church podcast studio,
which isn't there anymore. I think it's a green room or something now. So
exactly. So,
fun.
But you know, just I wouldn't have had a prayer, and you know, had seasons where I kind of did it more all on my own, and I realized that I needed a lot of help. That, you know, I could skate by on my own, and some of these past seasons in terms of the quality and different things, it felt like just skating by. But I just realized, you know, if I'm going to keep on this podcasting, I want to really, really do it well, and that I can't do that by myself. So I'm excited, really incredibly excited about bringing you aboard. And it's going to be very obvious, I think, to those who are listening that I got help.
Well, I don't know about that, but for me, it's so much fun to be a part of again. And I feel like I don't know, it's a dream come true because I get to do my work, and then I also get to learn from you about everything and pick your brain about everything from golf to life to business. And so it's really fun to be back here, being a part of this podcast and another one as well.
Yeah. Part of what I started last year, got a little bit overwhelmed starting it, is just a fun kind of dream of mine. And that's doing a podcast that is much like Space for Life, but it's all in the kind of the context of golf, which is one of my deep, deep passions. So it's called Links for Life. So if you have a remote interest in golf, or you know someone who is interested in golf, I think this is going to be a really fun podcast where we talk about not only all things golf, about how to improve your golf or different stories in the world of golf, but also how that relates to who we are as human beings and how we want to grow, both in faith and just grow as, you know, better people, better parents, better spouses, better just us. And so Links for Life is going to be talking about all those things that I've thought about for years, about the parallels between golf and the lessons we grind through and frustratingly learn in a golf game, and how that parallels in life. So Links for Life on all of the podcast platforms is there also.
Yeah, I'm excited about that podcast too. Are there any episodes either for Links for Life or Space for Life that you want to tease that we have coming up? either guest topics, any of the
Oh
above?
gosh, we've got some really neat episodes. Well, let me start with Space for
Okay,
Life.
perfect.
So I have several guests lined up that I think are going to be amazing. One, Keith McCurdy, and we're going to be talking about parenting. That's a subject I've never been willing to broach either in my own teaching, but Keith has got an amazing amount of experience from 30 years of counseling and speaking in this area of parenting in ways that I think could be transformative for people that are in the various stages of raising kids. So I think that's going to be an amazing couple of episodes. And then I'm going to bring back a good friend, David Dwight, who's been on the podcast. We're going to talk about another subject we haven't really talked that much directly about, and that's about grief. Because I think grief is something that touches all of us. And then have some incredible guests beyond that. On Links for Life, got a good friend new friend that I'll be talking to, Pete Hiskey, he and his family were one of the founders of the PGA Tour Bible Study. So that's going to be an incredible episode, and a bunch of other
cool.
great ones. So it's going to be fun. I am truly excited about it all.
Me too. I'm really excited about it.
The other thing we're going to be working on more, and probably most of the people who are engaged with Space for Life listen to it by way of audio, but a lot of people really love video, love YouTube channels. So you're going to be a huge help in helping me kind of up the level of the YouTube channel, which I do have up and going for Space for Life, but I think we're going to give a little bit more emphasis to it this year, and that will be fun for me. I think it's kind of a cool venture.
And so for anyone who wants to watch podcasts, you can watch Space for Life or Links for Life on the YouTube channel.
Yes.
And then potentially, depending on how things shake out, there might be some other stuff coming to the channel as well. So,
yeah, definitely.
It's exciting.
We're just kind of getting going on some of this, but already it's feeling like new life for Space for Life.
New life.
So those are kind of some of the main things that I wanted to emphasize that are going to be new. And I thought for this episode, and I'm going to kind of let you take a little bit of the lead for this, kind of ended last season a little bit abruptly in a sense with this, okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical this summer from it all. And I thought, and I didn't really intend for this when I did that episode, I think it was Rest and Recharge, episode 171, which would be worth going back and listening to if this episode is of interest to you. But I thought it would be good to step back and go, well, what was really behind that? And then I was really surprised at what came out of that sabbatical. So I thought it's worth talking about, not just because of Space for Life, because I do believe in a new way how important and valuable this concept of sabbatical can be and should be for virtually anyone.
I mean, it's interesting for me hearing you say that because you wrote the book Space to Breathe Again a few years ago, and we got to work closely then. And it's the idea of Sabbath has been something that I've seen growing more and more in you, and you've been such a strong supporter of. And so on one hand, I'm not really surprised that you were able to do that again, but I'm also curious what, I guess just because we haven't talked, what was leading you to wanting to take this summer off and do another mini sabbatical?
Yeah, well, the whole Space to Breathe Again and the concept of Sabbath was a book and a concept that really came out of desperation. It is my nature to run and gun, to go hard, and to drive myself in unhealthy ways. Nothing admirable like, wow, look at all the things you do, but in a way that easily kind of gets out of whack, out of perspective. And that was what led to Space to Breathe again. It led to the practice of Sabbath, which I believe is in the Bible and I believe is something that's really substantive and important for all of us. But that came out of desperation. And in a sense, this summer sabbatical came out of the same thing. It came out of a desperation, although I am learning a little bit to identify my weariness and my overload before it gets to desperation. So, which is good, a little bit of growth there. So I realized as I got to spring, and particularly as I began to add links for life into this and add things, good things into the mix, that I was getting tired, and that weariness was beginning to take away from some of the love and the passion of things. And I found myself beginning to think, how much longer am I going to do this? And I didn't like that thought, but
Right.
I also knew sometimes that's a thought that you need to have. And so rather than act out of an impulse or a feeling at the moment, I thought, okay, I think what I need to do is I think I need to take a break, a meaningful break, not just a short little break, a meaningful break, and give myself some space to breathe. And in doing so, I think I'll get some clarity. If nothing else, I'll catch my breath
Right.
on things. So went in really not necessarily with high expectations, but just with a sense that I needed to do this. I could tell somewhere in my gut that I needed to take a break, or else less than good things would happen.
I'm really curious about what the actual sabbatical looked like. But before that, and this might be total left turn, there could be another episode, but you mentioned that you're prone to running really hard and in unhealthy ways. Is that weariness that you're talking about, is that an indicator of it? Because I feel like that's a fine line when I try to think about it, of what's running hard in healthy, good ways, and then where does it cross that line, and how do we know if it's crossed the line?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I've come to learn that there are a couple of like warning signals, flags. One is I'm just tired. I'm just really tired. And when I notice that I'm tired, and even with the practice of the Sabbath, because I do that kind of religiously, although not necessarily all that well, when I begin to realize even that is not chipping away at the tiredness, I'm going, okay, that's something to pay attention to. A second thing I know that I need to pay attention to is, how am I with the people I care the most about? You know, if I find that I'm giving my best to people that I'm less associated with, and then I don't have anything left over in the tank for those that I love, I'm going, that's a warning signal to me. So that's something that I pay attention to. I think a third warning signal is when I'm finding that I don't have enough time for my closest friends. So when I get busy enough that I am just really having to work the calendar to find little spots here and there for those great friends, I'm going, okay, something is perhaps getting a little bit out of whack with this. So I try to pay attention to those red flags. I'd say maybe a fourth one is when my faith is starting to become routine and mundane, because that's not the way I feel. And that's not what I want to happen in my life. So I watch out for those warning signals. And, I think probably a few friends from the outside, or certainly Wheezy, could probably look at it and go, I think I saw it a lot sooner than you did.
Right.
But I realized that some of those things were showing themselves in the spring of last year, and I didn't like it, and I didn't want it, and I just go that's not doing
Right.
anybody, particularly me and those that I love, any good if I get into that overdrive mode.
And so because of the work you've done over the years and the sabbaticals that you've taken, you recognize the warning signs, and then instead of getting, I don't know, almost like despairing over it, where it's just like, I'm back here, you're like, okay, it's just time for another reset, it's time for another sabbatical. Is that kind of the thought process? Or
Yeah, but I would say it in some ways it's uh, there's a step before that. Sabbaticals, I find, are kind of acts of courage. As crazy as it sounds, so many people do not take sabbaticals because they convince themselves, number one, that they can't do it. And number two, stepping into a sabbatical is scary.
right.
Even though it's just creating some nice space for you to be able to enjoy life, it feels uncomfortable because we're not used to doing that. And so over the years, I've come to grow more comfortable and courageous with making that step to take a sabbatical. I've started to come to realize that the world doesn't revolve around me and won't desperately fall apart if I'm not a part of it. And so the choice to do the sabbatical for this past summer was not, in a sense, as difficult a choice to make as it has been in the past when I felt like, well, all of life is going to fall apart if I step out of it.
Well, because like in a lot of ways, it seems like an exercise or a muscle you've been exercising by regularly taking a Sabbath every week.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it makes it really easy, but it's easier because time and time again, you've trusted it.
And I think it's one of the huge things about Sabbath, and I think it's why it's a big deal in God's mind, is because it right sizes us. We begin to realize that the world does not revolve around us and it can do without us one day a week. And so it brings us to a place that we need to trust God and trust ourselves less. So yeah, it's a muscle to exercise. And it's not that I've got it down, because the very fact that I have to come back to it so often, just so, I'm wired this way, and some people maybe are less wired this way, but that's why I said, okay, I need to do this sabbatical.
That's really helpful for me to hear and encouraging in a lot of ways too.
And I framed it as a mini sabbatical because, I mean, who knows what's mini, what's not. I think I kind of framed it that way to feel better about it myself. Like, well, I'm not really doing this big sabbatical. It's just a little sabbatical or whatever. But it doesn't really make any difference, frankly, what you call it. It's a time to step away, just to step away for a period of time. And that's really hard for us as human beings to step away. We feel like we have to get something out of it. And I've been a part, this is going way off track, but I've been in part of several churches, and churches are kind of one of the first places that it's kind of okay for ministers to do sabbaticals. But I've watched so many churches who, the minute they say, okay, you're allowed to go away for a period of time, they start loading on all the things that the person has to accomplish in their sabbatical. Well, this is when you're going to write your book. This is when you're going to plan all your sermon series. This is where you can do it. And it's like, where's the sabbatical?
This is just like an agenda time to go do these items.
Yeah. So even in the churches, when we talk about this, I think we struggle with this idea of taking some time to not produce.
So what does it look like? Like, what did it look like for you? I guess I should say this summer.
Yeah.
What was your mindset going in?
And I didn't maybe have all of my hands around it when I talked about the idea of mini sabbatical. I personally like the idea of not overcomplicating it.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some things that I knew needed to be true for me for the period to be something of a sabbatical. The first was the things that were becoming a little bit of a burden to me. That is podcasting on a weekly schedule every single week. I've got to, put out another episode, writing a blog every single week. I've got to get it out on schedule, planning for weeks ahead, all of those things. And then I was doing coaching and mentoring on top of that. All of that meant that I had to be on all the time. And I realized I needed a period of time where I wasn't going to be on. So the idea for me, the most primary idea was I was going to have a period 2+ months of the summer where I didn't have to do anything at all with the podcast or anything at all related to writing. So I planned ahead all of my blogs. I took the entire summer, and people who follow Space for Life were just great because I did a whole series of episodes that I called the greatest hits. And I just took the best episodes, some great episodes over the last year and a half, and I just said, these are probably worth listening to again. It might be a lot better than my trying to create new content. So I just scheduled those whole things out. So for the pretty much, the entirety of the summer, I didn't have to think about podcasting. I didn't think about blogging. I didn't think about having to producing anything. I could just relax and enjoy it. And that was almost all that I did. I didn't have agendas to it other than, an incredibly fun trip to Scotland to play golf. A granddaughter on the way in the middle of the summer that I could relax and completely enjoy. I just had some fun, joyous things. Summertime's my favorite season that I could just completely immerse myself in. And I like the idea of not overcomplicating the Sabbath.
I think it's really helpful because I think I don't know if I would say it's human nature. Maybe it is, but it seems like my nature at least to try to overcomplicate that.
Yeah. And so I didn't. I just kind of had some wide open space to do some fun, different, enjoyable things. Weezy and I went, one night to American Shakespeare Theater out of town to just have a fun date night. Just do things that are a little bit out of the box, to enjoy life.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because there's, I'm sure, so much significance we're going to get into this episode of deeper things that happened throughout the sabbatical. But like just the enjoyment aspect, I'm curious, like what were some highlights from the summer of, you mentioned Scotland, like that had to have been an awesome trip.
Yeah.
Wasn't even intentionally wearing it. I've got the St. Andrew shirt on today.
I love it. Yeah. Well, the absolute highlight was a new granddaughter, Scotty Quinn Thompson, born June 22nd. And that just, what joy, that is that. You can't get any better than that.
Because that's number 2, right?
Number 2. We have Braden Perrin Thompson, grandchild number 1 to Alex and McKenna. Scotty is to Chris and Nina. And so we have 2 grandchildren. Braden's now about 20 months.
So fun. So
it's so much fun. And again, the sabbatical gave extra time for me to dive into that. That without it, maybe I would have just had to work harder to schedule, as sad as that is to say.
And instead, there's so much enjoyment and so much more richness that comes from that.
Yeah. So that was great. But then I had this, absolutely incredible 9-day trip to Scotland where we played, me with a group of friends, played 7 different rounds of golf on some of the most spectacular courses, key in a completely unrushed way.
That's so nice.
No agenda whatsoever for the trip other than go, wake up in a leisurely way, give all the time in the world to a round of golf on an incredible place, and then relax and enjoy the rest of the day. And of course, one of the highlights of that my final round was at the old course, which is, for those who don't play golf, is like one of the top 2 or 3 places that you'd ever want to play in the world. So the old course, and I can remember just standing on the first tee, and you're looking out at one of the widest, most beautiful fairways that exists in golf, and hitting the shot and then just walking in a quiet way with Caddy and a couple other friends down the fairway, and just thought, wow, this is just spectacular. This is magnificent. And I could get that sense of space to breathe. But beyond that, what kind of gets into one of the things from this sabbatical, this sense of being refreshed. Unbelievable. Didn't expect it.
Yeah, I'm sure that moment was so much richer being contained and part of the sabbatical than it's a beautiful fairway. It's everything's awesome. But it just might have hit different if you weren't in that moment where you're saying the refreshment.
Yeah, absolutely. If during that 9 days I had, ginning in my mind, well, what are the podcast episodes I need to be doing after this? And I need to be contacting this person or this person. Let me just check my emails while I'm here. It would have changed the experience. I still would have had a great, fun time. It was spectacular anyway around. But that extra space, that extra freedom that the sabbatical gave me allowed for something on another level to happen.
Which is, I think, interesting the way you described that, where you walked out and it felt like, I can't remember the words you just used, but like the deep breath in as you're walking into it. I don't know if that's the way that everyone would describe that moment.
Well, what I began to reflect on is that both in my life, but also in friends' lives, people that I talk to, that word refreshed is a rare word that we would use these days. When I think of rest, I think of rest as recuperating, recovering. So it's something that we do because we are tired and we get just enough in to get our heads just above water so that we can then do it again and then recover or recuperate. But I think that the whole idea behind Sabbath and behind sabbatical and behind really the way God would have us live is that we would have these constant experiences of refreshment. So I think particularly one of my favorite Psalms, Psalm 23. And when I think about this, I think about it practically as describing an experience of sabbatical. So it says, the Lord is my shepherd. I have everything that I need. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. And I think about that, and it's at the beginning of the psalm. It's not in response to being overloaded. It's at the beginning that I think God is offering us to begin out of refreshment, of lying down in green pastures, of being led by quiet waters. And then that expression, he refreshes my soul. And so when I think of those listening and why I wanted to do this episode, I wanted to give, in a sense, a vision that I tasted this summer, almost in an unexpected way, where I was thinking about the summer as just recovering, that I got to experience being refreshed, and that I believe that is something that God has for us. God desires for us. It's a gift to us. We still have to make the choice to enter into it, but it's a gift he offers to us out of it. And so I got a taste of that this summer. I got a taste of being refreshed, and what that does for your soul and what that does beyond that, which we'll talk a little bit about, was the surprise of the sabbatical.
That is really cool. You were using the analogy of treading water, and I think about getting gas. I probably the worst person at this. If I will fill up just past the quarter tank and I'm going to be empty again, and versus like filling up and then starting a road trip almost from a full tank of gas.
A full tank. And, when you do that, I'm sure, because I used to do that all through college of, fill up to it means that you're constantly in a little bit of a state of anxiety.
Right.
Because you're always having to watch the tank.
And then you add in this, and this goes hand in hand of packing more in a schedule. And I'm like, oh, wait, it happened on the way over here. I'm like, I'm at 5 miles to empty. I need to stop on the way here. And
yeah,
it's just such a different reframe. And it's cool hearing your experience with being refreshed in it. And it's not just, like you're saying, this replenishment of what you lost, but it's something that moves you into a next season, which I think is the other unique thing about sabbaticals, is that it is this refreshment, but I think that it, in a weird way, also expands far beyond whatever it was before, whatever season you were going through. It's like both of those in a unique way fit together.
Yeah, it does. But I don't want to lose the fact that the sabbatical is hard. It doesn't come naturally in our culture. It doesn't come naturally for us to slow down, to quiet down, to stop producing. I've been thinking about this literally for 30 years, was when God kind of knocked me over the head with this idea of I don't have to run at breakneck speed all the time. I mean, I can remember 1990, so I guess 25 plus years. It still is really hard for me. I've been working out for a long time. It's still against my nature, against the grain. So for those who are just, they're thinking, oh, it sounds so nice, it's not possible, whatever. It is hard. So, but.
Well, could I ask then, at 30 years in, it's still hard. Were there times this sabbatical that you felt like you were almost fighting yourself to be able to enter in?
Yeah. Yes. If I didn't have a couple of kind of hard and fast rules, I think I probably would have backslidden. I would have fallen off the wagon, so to speak, and probably gotten back into things. So, but because I had all of the episodes booked and all of the blogs written, it helped me when I was tempted, so to speak, to try to do another one, to try to get ahead, to try to figure out the fall, for instance.
Right. Which it sounds like that was a natural tendency that you're having throughout at least at times.
Yeah. And some of that is okay, because what I realized is when I created that space that the sabbatical created for me, it, by very virtue of creating that space, it expanded my vision of things. Because when you're in the mode of doing and producing and executing, you almost by nature have to create some guardrails to your vision, because you can't be constantly introducing new things. You don't have room for it. You've got things to do, places to go, people to see.
Right.
So you line up and you stay within the guardrails of executing the plan and the things that you have to do in life. When you take the sabbatical, you in essence take off those guardrails to enjoy life, but then all of a sudden possibilities can enter into your mind and you have a little bit of space to think, wow, that would really be interesting. And honestly, the steps we're making with you being part of Space for Life now are an expansion of the vision of what I thought about, as I just allowed myself to dream and thought, well, suppose I took it to another level. Suppose we did this with the podcast. Suppose this. And so it expanded my vision without some of the burden of thinking, well, I have to do vision stuff.
Right.
Associated with it.
It was my understanding that you were even almost on the fence of whether you wanted to continue it. So it wasn't even that you're like, I'm going to do a sabbatical and brainstorm of how to level it up in the fall. It's just, I'm not even sure. Is that accurate or?
Yeah, I think I'd even take it a step further. I knew that one of the things that I didn't kind of put as a goal of the sabbatical was I wanted to take some time to step back, to discern,
Mm-hmm.
to listen as to whether this was something I should continue to do. I've been doing it for, 5+ years, and I've been writing and I've been working in a sense hard, and I'm getting to an age that I don't have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to take some time to think, do I still feel called? Do I still feel like this is something I'm supposed to do? And because I was tired going
Mm-hmm.
into it, if I'd placed a wager,
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought, I think maybe that might be my last season. But it was in creating the space that I found that my natural heart
Mm-hmm.
was enlivened, the passion came back, and I went, no, I actually really do want to continue doing this. Not only that, imagine what it could be. And that's something that I think is an incredible benefit. So when I was growing up, my dad was the CEO. He was the president of Virginia Caterpillar Tractor Company. It was a good sized company. And he did two things with that I thought were amazing. One is he set a policy for the executives within the company that they had to take 2 weeks of their vacation in one fell swoop, because he was convinced in his own life that 1 week's vacation, you spend half of it winding down and half of it winding back up. And he knew that he wasn't able to get rest outside of 2 weeks. And he kind of just told me that kind of matter of fact, but it stuck with me to think they made the decision not only for themselves, but for the good of the people in the company to say 2 weeks at a time. It was probably inconvenient to the company to have the people out for 2 weeks at a time,
Right.
particularly back then. And so then he and my mom would go down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida for 2 weeks without us. And I can remember him telling us, by doing this, we come back better parents,
Right.
and you actually come back better children because we miss one another.
Mm-hmm.
We enjoy one another. And it's the same thing that we're talking about here, that by creating this space, passion and enjoyment and purpose and vision, it all expands. And even though that's not the purpose per se of it,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of this extra benefit that in itself probably makes it 10 times more valuable than if you just kept on plodding away at your work.
Right. That's it's so counterintuitive, but it's more productive and it's everything that you want.
Yes.
And it feels like the exact opposite and
Yeah.
so much more too. It's what you want and layers deeper.
Yeah. And I've seen this true for me time and again. I will say I have also seen it true for some of the people that I've talked to and coached or consulted with or mentored that had the courage to try it. And they came back and they said, that was so great.
So would you then say that sabbaticals in some form are for everyone, or you would strongly encourage for everyone, or where would be your
Yeah.
stance outside of just you personally?
Yeah. Well, I've already said kind of many times, I believe Sabbath is for everyone.
Okay.
I believe this is a command, which one of the 10 commandments from God for our good,
Mm-hmm.
meant for everyone. So that in and of itself is a challenge. I would suggest that some form of sabbatical is for everyone. Now, the form
Mm-hmm.
may look very different depending on the season of life. If someone is in a, incredibly busy season of work, a sabbatical might look like a long weekend. It might look like taking some time to step away and think about the vision for the for the company. A sabbatical, I know for a couple of people I've talked to, means going away and thinking about family mission. What is our family about? So it can look like a lot of different things. But I believe that some form of sabbatical should be a regular practice for everyone. So one of the conclusions for me coming out of this, which I really hadn't even considered beforehand, is now every summer will be a sabbatical. For as long as I do this, and I don't know how long I'll do this, I realize that I am better in every form, whether it's in podcasting or as a grandparent or whatever. I am better with the regular practice of this. So I've just determined, as long as I do this, I'm going to take the summer off. I know other people can't do that.
Right.
Not even suggesting that.
But in your situation, it's worth it. And
Yes. But I have known some people that did that and more that seemed 10 times more impossible. So the challenge is, for a sabbatical to be meaningful, I think it has to be a little bit uncomfortable. It has to be a little bit more than what you've done before, because our brains are wired for staying in the box on things. So if taking a weekend away to sabbatical is no different than another weekend, it's going to have that kind of impact. But if you expand it and say, you know what, I haven't taken 4 days off to just sit and enjoy life in 5 years, now that can be a sabbatical. So sabbaticals, I think, in some fashion, they take courage and they also take some creativity. What is it that for me is going to create space for reflection, for expansion, for creativity, and for life to re-enter? But yes, to your question, I really believe that practice in some form is something that would bring life to anybody willing to try it.
It's really helpful. And the warnings that you gave at the beginning of this episode, I felt like can in a lot of ways apply to everyone. Of if you're feeling weary, if you're giving your energy to everyone else, if you're not having time for the people closest to you.
If you're short-tempered with your kids or with your spouse, if you're just finding yourself, with some low-grade depression or anxiety, things that are pandemic in our culture, if those things are present, then listen.
Right.
Listen to what your life is telling you and be brave. Even if planning the sabbatical has to be 2 months out because of the realities of what you're doing, at some point in the future, you can find a place and say, you know what? It won't be easy, but I need it that much. And so I'll do it.
And I'm going to try just a little bit more than I've tried before.
Yeah, have that faith. And, if you need to, get a little someone to be accountability for you, to help you think it through. And, because probably some other people see you a lot more clearly than you do yourself. And when you put it out there, and, then there's a good chance you're going to do it.
I think that's so helpful.
Yeah. So my hope for those listening is not so much that you just have the context for which we're entering season 6 and some new exciting things, but that you might be challenged to step out of the box, to step out of your comfort zone and plan and think about what's some life I can enter into, what's some space, some green pastures, quiet waters. How could I put myself in a place that my soul could be refreshed? So there's one other verse I would throw out because I think it is a beautiful vision and it's a warning. Isaiah 30:15 says, "In repentance and rest is my salvation. In quietness and trust is my strength." This is from God. And then it says, "But you would have none of it." So God was inviting the Israelite people into a better way of repentance and rest, quietness and trust. And then almost, I can imagine God kind of just shaking in his head, going, but you would have none of it. So let's not fall into that trap. Let's find a place. How cool would it be if a group of those listening sometime in the next few months said, it was hard, but I found a little bit of space. Wow, I can't believe what God did in that time.
That's cool. And I would say your book, Space to Breathe Again, was really helpful for me in trying to figure out. It has a lot of like practical insights of how to dig into it and just encouragement and a lot of stuff from your story. So I would say check that out.
I think the book Space to Breathe Again is particularly good for small groups. So I want to kind of actually encourage that, because I know a lot of people get back into small groups in September and trying to figure out, well, what are we going to talk about? So it's perfectly situated for like an 8-week small group study. So if anybody is interested, the normal price is $15 for the book, hardback or paperback. But if people want to get 5 or more copies, I'm happy and joyous to give them for $10 a copy. So just you can email me at tommy@tommythompson.org or DM me at LinkedIn or Instagram. Just get in contact with me some way, and I'd love to continue to share that book, Life Lessons from 30 Years of Being Stubborn.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about your experience with it. I'm personally really encouraged, and I'm sure others are.
Well, thanks. It's really fun doing this together, and it's going to be fun doing the podcast together this year. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to have episodes of Links for Life and Space for Life coming up over all the weeks and months ahead. So please share this with friends. Hopefully it's something that will encourage and bring life to other people. So thanks for joining in.